I'm hired by the school district, but I'm not a school district employee. So I can talk to the boys about the real shit. The first year that Playboy came out was in the 1950s, and there was something like 54,000 subscribers. And now every day, just Pornhub gets like 81 million views a minute. Hundreds of years ago, take the richest man in the entire world. A 13-year-old could see more naked women in one day than that king or whoever could see in his entire lifetime. They joke and they're smiling and they get red or whatever. I'm like, here's the thing. This is something that you're experiencing right now. 85 to 90% of young men before the age of 14 have seen pornography. The percentage of them that have seen violent pornography is more than 50%. A lot of parents are not talking to their kids about it, but it's such a disservice to your kid. If you're afraid as the father to have an awkward conversation, they're getting their lesson about it from their phone or from the internet or from Pornhub.
What's good, fatherhood? Welcome to Uncommon, the Dad Work podcast. Something like episode 72 or 73 or something like that, but the numbers are not that important. With very special guest to my heart today, Mr. Dennis Marolda, husband, father, mentor, creator of Building Men, and has mentored really through his work 10,000 young men at this point, which is astonishing to me. Welcome, sir.
What is up, my man? Thank you for the intro. Appreciate it. Their beard looks great today.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
We were just chatting about, the sword behind you, the beard. It's just you definitely give me beard envy as I'm looking at the masculinity just pouring through the screen right now.
Well, I should send you some growth oil and a little brush to brush it and take care of it, and then we'll hook you up with a barber, and you'll be good from there.
I actually had a beard when I turned. I'll be 50 in a couple months. But when I turned 40, I had a beard that was as lengthy and girthy as yours is currently. It was a long beard. I think I would find birds in it and twigs and like it was, but it was something to behold without a doubt. So I know what the work that goes into it. So I just wanted to just acknowledge it.
Yeah, at that point, and it's a going back and forth between how much does this give me strength, and how much do I want my wife to like me, and so it's constantly balancing those two things. And the dream is that I get it a little bit longer Viking length, and I can braid it. But
There
then,
you go.
then like to your point, I'm going to find birds in there. And
Right.
who knows
What was it? The Viking show was like Ragnar Lothbrok or something along those lines was his name. Have you ever seen the things where the man meets his woman or his wife when he has the beard and he shaves it off and she's like, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. You're not the same person.
That's almost my life story.
Right.
That's almost, yeah. I met my wife when I had a beard. I shaved it shortly after we were dating, and she was like, never again. Never. And then we had been married for probably about 6 years, and I was just like, I wonder what my face looks like. So I shaved it, and she was like, no, again, never again. So I like to keep the beard partly for that reason.
Well, I appreciate you, like us going off the rails a little bit to start the episode. Absolutely, man. Appreciate
It's
that.
important.
Yeah,
It's an important part of masculinity, and really, we grow beards for each other more than anything else. Which
Agreed.
we're partly here to talk about how we support each other. So it's a perfect segue. But we were just talking right before we started the show, and I was talking about mentoring my son, and he's learning how to wipe his butt for the first time, and I didn't know the skills that went into that, and how I'm a little bit proud of him for how well he's doing, and for having graduated kindergarten recently. And then you laid on me that today your daughter graduated high school, and I was like, man, I can't even imagine that at this point. And I imagine that it's felt like the blink of an eye for you. So how is that for you?
Yeah, it's definitely a swelling of emotion. I would say this is I've three, and so this will be my second one to graduate high school. My son he just turned 21. He's going to his senior year of college. But with my daughter, it was like I can still vividly remember the moments that all my children were born, and it's like a blink of an eye. And this morning I got up before the sun was out, and I went for a long walk, saw the sunrise, and I was able to just take the moment in and really reflect upon, the last 18 years or so of her life and the person that she has become. And at the time, I took a picture of the sunrise, and I walked by the high school, and I took a picture of the marquee outside that said, "Congratulations, graduating class of 2026." And I took a picture of that with the sunrise in the background, and I sent it to her. And I just sent a long message to her. I mean, I'll write her a card and I'll give her a book. Usually, when my kids graduate, I'll give them a book. And for her, I'm going to choose The Alchemist as the book I'm going to give to her. And, I'll write something in it as well. But it was along the lines of really slowing down and appreciating the moments. And instead of being so, you want to get through this so quick and through that so quick, to really take a look around and recognize like this moment here this is a big part of your journey in your life, and to really soak it all in today instead of just like rushing through. And she's the president of the student council, so she'll have a big part in the graduation ceremony tonight, and she's done a really nice job in high school, so she'll get some accolades as well. But I was like, it's not about how many times your name is called for this award or this scholarship. It's about the type of person that you're becoming. And that was one of the things that I really reflected upon, is that journey. And I think back to my own experience. I wish somebody would have given me that advice to take a moment and slow down and soak it all in. I mean, I would give my left nut right now to go back and have another crack at my senior year of high school and playing sports and like experiencing life with everything that I've experienced now and knowing what I know now. So that was what I was reflecting upon this morning.
Yeah, I too wish that I had somebody that could have shared that with me from their experience rather than just saying things like time goes so fast, or like don't what do I say to my son when he's like, when am I going to be your age? Don't wish away your youth. Things like that. It's just like, what is this guy talking about? What do you know? I'm going to grow up. But being able to have somebody to share that from a depth of experience and in a heartfelt manner would have definitely changed things.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons why, I mean, I'm so invested in what I'm doing right now is, I just started to jot some notes down about a Father's Day reflection I'm going to put out this weekend. I didn't have that. I didn't have. I had a father who was there, but he was not a good man. He was not a good role model, and so I learned a lot from him of what I did not want to be. And it's really impacted how I'm currently showing up. And a lot of the stuff that's gone on in my life is not wanting to be like my father. So I didn't have that guy who I could turn to, be like, "Hey dad, what do you think about this situation?" Mine was more, I was in fear of him, and he's no longer a part of my life. He abandoned the family. And so it's Father's Day also is a big moment for me to really sit back and reflect upon decisions that I've made that are kind of the antithesis of who he was as a person.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, it really brings us into this moment of being able to reflect both on the things that they did that have been so indispensably helpful for us, and then also the wounded men that they
Mm,
were and the lessons that we can take from that as well. So you were telling me before, we've chatted before, but you were a principal in the school system for 15 years,
mm,
and then you left. And then you left, and that sounds a little
yep.
crazy.
Yeah.
So tell me about that. Bring us into that.
Yeah, it's wasn't a real popular decision at the time. It definitely took a lot of soul searching to be able to do so. I started as an assistant principal in 2005, which is when I started the Building Men program. I recognized in my school that most of my day was spent with X number of boys that were going, getting into the same trouble that I got into when I was a young man, the failing grades, getting, sent to the office. And like I saw the impact of the program and how what it did for the boys in school, not only for them, but their relationships with the teachers, with their peers, and then with the girls in the school as well. And it started to really turn around the school. And I was able to implement a program like that as I went through my years in school leadership. And I got to a point where I felt like education was starting to turn a little bit, and it was way more based on the score on a sheet of paper. It was more around test scores and standardization rather than the character pillars that I really felt were important for the young men. So I made the decision in in the summer of 2019 to leave public education. And I just started like, okay, how can I do this? I wasn't quite sure. It was pretty much like ready, fire, aim. I was like, try to figure it out. And I was slowly, slow as smooth, smooth as fast. So it was taking some time to really get dialed into how I was going to do it. And then COVID shuts the world down. And it was, that's where I really had to be like, okay, how am I going to do this? And it was actually my brother who really helped me through a lot of my mental health struggles during that time when I left public education, because during COVID, it was like my salary was almost zero. I was really struggling, had a tough time. But one of the reasons why I did it, but Rob, was because I saw this deficit and the trajectory in education. We were not getting closer to closing the gap. It was actually getting further and further from really what I believed it should be. So it's only been the last, I want to say, 3 years that I was able to really establish a program, and now I'm working in schools. So it took, again, it took a long time to be able to get to that point. But now I've seen what a difference it's making with the boys, the young men that I'm able to spend time with over the course of a school year, and how it could really, again, turn around a school. And this is me going into a school one day a month for the course of the full year. So I see the boys 10 times during the course of the year, but in those 10 meetings, really, really powerful. You talk about, when you get a group of men together, when you go on a retreat or something along those lines. Now imagine that happening 10 times during your high school experience. That's how I was able to see some really big growth. So long story long, I guess, I recognize that what what we were doing in education wasn't working. And I didn't see a way that I was able to do that while I was a principal. I needed to take a step back to be able to impact a larger group of individuals by leaving education to start my own program.
Mm. And what were the things that you were seeing our boys struggle with? And what are you seeing now as well?
So when I first started the program, it probably was the same things that I was seeing and you might have seen as you were growing up. And a lot of them were the ideals that my father believed in. Young men hear a lot of it as they're growing up. And I call them like falsehoods around masculinity or false masculinity. And it was around athletic dominance. You needed to be bigger, faster, stronger. And while I do definitely believe you need to be able to take care of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, being a good man doesn't mean that you have to have a six pack. Being a good man doesn't mean you have to be able to dunk a basketball, throw a baseball faster or farther, be able to bench 315. Good things to be able to do, but it shouldn't be based on you being able to dominate another human being. It was based on sexual conquest, by how many girls you were sleeping with, the number, the notches on the belt, and or the attractiveness, where your peers and friends were saying, "Oh, wow, you're the man. You were able to get in bed with this girl or that girl." And then it was around economic success. And while I do think you should be able to provide and protect, right? Those are important things, but you can't base being a man on the amount of money in your bank account. And so that's what I was seeing. And that's something that is, I feel like it's only gotten worse, Rob, after, with social media and how connected kids are to that. They're constantly seeing they're in a deficit of what they should look like, how much money they should be making, the type of girls they should be with. And so I recognize like that's a problem. I also recognize that the boys were also becoming soft at the same time. There was a lot less resiliency, there was less self-discipline, there was less accountability on their part. And so, when I go into a school every month, we have 12 character pillars that we'll address over the course of the school year, and 12 healthy habits that we address as well. And so, in one full year, the boys are coming away with specific lessons around accountability, authenticity, courage, humility, integrity, leadership, resilience, self discipline, and the importance of stacking healthy habits, getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, strength training, getting off your phone, intentionally putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation, practicing gratitude, journaling, reading, and the importance of getting sunlight on your face. And over the year, like all of a sudden, these boys going through this experience together. And why I think mentoring is great one on one, when you're able to be surrounded by your brothers, kids that are in the group, in your grade or your school with you, and you're going through this together and you're able to hold one another accountable. Man, you can see some things happen really, really quickly. And Rob, one of the things I tell the boys in the beginning of the school year, And, I'm basically like, I don't want to, be offensive to your teachers, to the administrators here, to the curriculum. But what you'll learn here in 10 days during the course of this year is more important than anything that any class you'll be in for 180 days. Come here, show up, pour into it. The more that you put in, the more that you're going to get out of this program. And I tell them, like, these things will translate not only to you being the best 10th grader or 11th grader, it'll translate to you being the best 25-year-old, 35-year-old husband, father, brother, and like all those things because they're transferable, all the skills that we talk about.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, what are some of the biggest shifts that you see and that you have seen in these young men, that where they start to where they end
Mm.
up?
Yeah, it's so when I first walk in, and many of the schools where I work, I look different than the avatar of the boys that are in the school. Many of the schools where I work are in some inner city areas in central and north New Jersey where I might be the only Caucasian person in the room. And so I walk in as a big white dude, and a lot of these guys are looking at me that are black and Hispanic, and they're like, who is this white guy, and why would I ever listen to him? And right off the bat, what I attempt to do is express vulnerability to the boys. One thing that we talk about is the importance of being able to get stuff off of your chest. I too often, and I'm sure you see it with men that you speak to and work with right now, or those that are listening, men, as difficult things come up, they do one of two things. They either act out in an aggressive way or they repress those things that are going on. And I talk to the boys about, as you deal with struggles in your life, it's like shaking up a soda bottle. It either comes out as an explosion or you let it sit for a long period of time after it's been shooken up and the soda goes flat.
Mm,
And so we talk about, like, how can you get into a position where you can kind of slowly let off the pressure of that soda, where it goes, tss, you get a little bit out, tss, a little bit out, tss, a little bit out. So I share a lot of stories in the very beginning of the year. I share stories of abusive situations with my own father. And then in the last year and a half since my brother passed, I share stories of his death as well. And he was my partner in what I'm doing in Building Men. He was the one. Anthony was a physical trainer. He was so enlightened on the healthy things that you can do to basically like optimize every ounce of everything in your body and use the environment. He was the one who would wake up before the sun came out, shoes off, barefoot, walk as the sun is coming up. He did everything. Just a physical specimen, but he also struggled with his mental health his entire life. He struggled with anxiety and depression, and so he learned a lot of tricks to be able to overcome those things with like lifestyle medication rather than popping pills. So I share the story of my brother's death, and we didn't take his life. And right now we're recording in June. It's Men's Mental Health Month. He was killed in a tragic accident. But as I tell the story with the boys, you could hear it in my voice now. And my voice starts to crack. He was not only my brother, he was my best friend in the entire world. And as Father's Day comes up right now as well, he was born in January of 1991. I was 14 years old. So I was in my 8th grade year going into my freshman year of high school. And the first thing that I saw when I saw him in the crib, I told him, I got you. I'm not going to let dad hurt you like he hurt me. So I started the path of fatherhood at a very young age as well. Like, I really feel like I've been a father for freaking 35 years already, you know? So as I speak to the boys in the very beginning of the year, I express a level of vulnerability with them, saying like there is strength in vulnerability. And too often what men do, and I'm sure you see this as well, men go out and they talk about the game that's on TV. They talk about how much their job sucks, the girl across the bar with the big boobs and all. It's not about, hey man, like I'm really struggling with my mental health right now. Or, hey, I've been dealing with some really difficult things at home. Can I sit down and like express what's going on to you? Because they're afraid of retribution, of that being used in some way against them. So I try to do with the boys is normalize being authentic, but also being vulnerable. And I say there's a tremendous amount of strength and vulnerability. And so right in the beginning of the year, they kind of tiptoe into it in the beginning. And we start every single meeting, one with a handshake. Room is set up in a circle. We look every other young man in the eye, man in the eye. We shake hands, say their name, and we talk to them like, it's like you're going on a job interview or you're meeting your girlfriend's father for the first time. So we really talk about the importance of how you present yourself initially with confidence. And then when we're sitting down, we share a win and a struggle. And one of the reasons that I do that is to celebrate the things that are going on in our life that we're proud of. To be like, hey, listen, I made honor roll this marking period, or listen, my sleep schedule's honor. I've been getting to the gym 4 days a week, or I made the basketball team after I got cut last year. So to honor the things that they're going through that are really powerful, and then also to share, like, I'm struggling with this. So if they have a struggle, to share a struggle. You know, I failed my math grade. My girlfriend is talking to this other guy, and I'm really struggling. Whatever the thing is, and as the year goes on, they get a little bit deeper into the struggles that they're going through. And now what they're doing is not only they're experiencing the lessons that I'm teaching them around character education, the character pillars, and in my years of education, I know a lot of ways, the tricks of the trade to get boys to get together in groups and do activities and talk, but they're also sharing things that are difficult. And then what the cool thing is, Rob, is they start to hold each other accountable outside of the meetings. So now, like, if you make a commitment at the end of a meeting that you're going to, you're not going to get written up for a behavior referral at all this month, and then I see you in the hallway and you're trying to cut class, I'd be like, yo, man, you got to get your ass to class right now. You made this commitment. So you start to see it's like the rising tides rise all ships in the harbor. That's what starts to happen. And you see boys that were typically considered at risk that are now becoming leaders in the school and holding each other to a higher standard. I could sit back and say, damn, like this is a really powerful thing that's going on right now because of that. So again, like what I believe is that we need to model for the young men, like what are the character traits that we really believe in? What are the healthy habits? And then how do we go about doing that and express ourselves in a way where we're not worried about that expression of our emotions being used against us in any way, shape, or form? And I tell them right off the bat, what is said here stays here. That is a capital T truth. That is our gospel. If you are using anything outside of this meeting to like hurt someone or to make fun of them, you're done. You're out of the group. That is something we cannot do here. And I mean, and I've been doing it for a long time now, and I've never had that breach of trust. I've never had anyone use it in any way, shape, or form. So to me, that's evidence that this has really taken hold and it's working in the schools where I'm able to work with the young men right now.
Hmm. You brought up technology. You brought up get off your
Mm,
cell phones
yep.
a couple of minutes back, and I think about this so often that I remember sitting in high school with my Nextel Chirp phone off in my backpack because it's like you couldn't get caught with it. But that phone, it was like 10 cents a text message. Didn't really do anything. It had a green
Right.
screen. If anybody has not seen these things, it was just an old like a back of a watch face. And now I'm holding this phone in my hand that like I can talk to you across in New Jersey. I can talk to my client in India on the other side of the world in an instant. I can access anything that I want to. And my wife and I were on Instagram a year and a half ago looking at somebody videotaping a museum exhibit that had my old phone in it. And then it had the first iPhone. And then it had the newest one at the time. And I was like, man, it's insane to me how our access to pretty much anything that we want has changed in such a short
Mm,
period of time. And so I'm curious, you brought up the phone thing, limiting their phone usage, but I imagine it goes far beyond that. What are the pitfalls that you see when it comes to access to these things? Maybe not the cross side, but this.
well, based on if anyone's listening, if you haven't read the book The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, I highly, highly recommend that. I just had the pleasure and the honor of seeing Dr. Arthur Brooks speak. If you don't know him, definitely follow along with him. He's a professor at Harvard Business School, but he doesn't teach about finance or marketing or accounting or business philosophy. He teaches about happiness. And in the speech, Rob, he was talking about that in particular, about the cell phone like the more that we're connected to a screen, the less that we're connected to one ourselves and then to the world in general. And there's a an unbelievable study that was done around the rates of anxiety and depression, especially with kids in their teenage years into their early 20s. And the year that we started to see an unbelievable increase in the number of students that and young men and women that were reporting feeling anxiety and depression was the year 2012. And that's when the iPhone came out with the front facing camera. And that really changed the game because not only, were they connected to social media, but this was a thing that I thought about recently. When we're growing up, you mentioned the chirp phone, this and that. You'd wake up in the morning, you'd look at yourself in the mirror, brush your teeth, maybe you have a pimple on your face if you're a kid. I wish my beard would grow like that guy that I saw on TV. And then maybe you have a mirror in your locker and you see yourself over the course of a day. Maybe you look at yourself 10 times a day. The average teenager right now is looking at their face over 300 times a day because they're on Snapchat and they're doing the filters and they're taking selfies. And you can imagine why they're feeling anxious and depressed, especially when they're comparing themselves to others that they're seeing on social media. So that's such a huge piece of it. And in the anxious generation, Jonathan Haidt says, one, don't even let your kids have a device until they're in high school. And then two, no social media until they're like 16, 17 years of age. And I totally agree with that because their brains are totally warped because of it. And that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is the research behind left and right brain, which is absolutely fascinating to me. I just did a workshop for educators 2 days ago, and I was teaching them about how kids' brains work pretty much. And right brain are the big picture things. What's the meaning of life? What is love? What happens after I die? Right? Like beautiful things about art and connectivity. And then the left brain is more minute details. It's how do you figure out this problem? It's like the pinpointing of things that we do. So, you're creating lists and you're locked in that way. That's more left brain. And people think you're either right or left brain, where it's you're a combination of both. And I think schools are pushing kids more to be left brained. And the way that you can become more right brain is you got to sit in boredom for a little bit. You got to be able to sit there and think about, wow, I wonder how I feel about this, that, or the other. So even now, I mentioned I was on a long walk this morning. I don't have any technology with me. I'm just out and I think. And you get bored a little bit and then you start to think about different things as well. How often are you driving and at a stoplight, everybody's on their phone, or you're in the grocery store and God forbid someone's in line and they're not looking at their phone because people are afraid to sit in a level of boredom. There was also a study done by some scientists, and they really wanted to get deep into boredom and like what that did. And so they had something along the lines of 500 test subjects sit in a room alone with nothing for 15 minutes. Before they went in, they basically said, there's going to be a button in this room that can administer an electrical shock to you. And so they let them test out what did that shock feel like. And so they tested it, and the people were like, wow, that really sucked. I would pay money to not have that happen to me again. Yet, when that same group of people were in this room for 15 minutes only with nothing to do but just sit with their own thoughts, 25% of women hit the button to shock themselves, and 66% of the men shocked themselves rather than sit in boredom. And there was one dude who shocked himself 190 times. Unbelievable. Like that like idea around, I would rather experience pain than sit in boredom. So when I work with young men, very beginning of the year, I think it's our second lesson of the year, I show them this video. It's called the Battle for Your Time. It's a TED Talk. Highly recommend you take a look at it. And it talks about how much time we're spending connected to a device. And on average, young men and women are spending 93% of their free time connected to a device. And I asked the boys in the room, tell me things that are on your bucket list. This is before I show them the video. And they're like, I'm going to travel. I'm going to be playing the NFL. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to start a business. I'm going to. And then I have them take out their phones and see how much time they're typically spending on just connected to their phone. That's not even video games in front of a computer. And the average amount of time when they come into the program they're spending on their phone is over 7.5 hours per day on their phone. That's the average, which means half of them are above that. And I'm like, how are you going to accomplish your goals if you're connected to this device, which is filtering you to be way more left brained? You're not able to take a step back and think about these big picture things. So we make a commitment every month to decrease the amount of screen time by 10%. right? And if you're on the phone for 420 minutes, that's 45 minutes. Can you cut it down by 45 minutes, per week, per day over the course? Sure. And imagine if you're off the phone for 45 minutes a day and you spent that time exercising or writing or doing your homework, or then all of a sudden they could figure out that they do have the capacity and the time to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. Plus their grades will go up in school and they'll look different. Imagine if you spend 45 minutes a day training your body, right? Or doing something, learning a skill. It's a total game changer. So that's what I see in schools. And by the time we get to the end of the year, it's one of the reasons why the boys are getting better grades. They're physically, mentally, emotionally healthier, and they're getting in way less trouble. And that's one of the big keys, is like just getting that damn thing out of their hands and for them to see the problem. We talk about the problem named as the problem solved. Once they can make that connection, that the social connection is way more important than being connected to a 3 by 5 inch thing that is trying to suck your brain right out of your skull.
Yeah, I don't know what the statistic is for adults now, but a few years ago, it was at least 3.5 hours a day with 2.5 hours on social media.
Mhm.
And then, you take that, and I can just get the calculator right now. That's 2.5 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's 912 hours that you're just playing on social media. That's 912 hours that you could be doing something else, reading a book, getting better within yourself. If you got paid $50 an hour for that, that's $45,000 of income that you just you're literally throwing out the window of potential. And yeah, I think that as fathers, I think that I think it's like 60%. There's our kids are 60% likely to inherit our relationship with our phone.
Mm.
And so our relationship with our phone sets them up for success and or failure as well. If we're wasting our time, we're wasting their future time. And there's so much that we can do with that time if we become aware of it and we reinvest it.
Yeah, especially if your children are like the age that your children are right now. They're looking to you to teach them how to do everything, how to wipe their ass and how to have a connection with their phone. And so if they see you choosing to look at a screen instead of communicate with them, like that's the lesson that they're learning. So I get it. There are times that you have to answer the email or there's something important that comes up. I would say, hey, listen, Rob, like, hey, I want to go outside and have a catch with you. Like, dad just has to answer this text message really quickly. I'll be right back there with you. You know, let's do this or that. This way that like you're acknowledging that rather just like doom scrolling on the couch as your kid is, hey dad, because that goes away pretty quickly. You remember the first time that your kid takes a step and that they say dad for the first time, or they go to school, like you remember those first, but you don't remember the last time that your kid asked you to tuck them in or read them a story or play catch with them. And the more that you're connected to your phone, the quicker those moments are going to creep up on you, where you're going to have a last time that your son is like, hey dad, let's go do whatever the thing is. So get off the damn phone. Like you're the one that's leading your family. You're the one that's leading your kids. So really be connected to them in those moments.
Hmm. Yeah, I thought about this yesterday. As I was pushing the three of them on the swing set, and my son's 5. He hasn't quite figured out hit the momentum on the swing
Mm.
yet. So I would get on and I would show him, and then he'd get on and he was starting to get it. And I was like, really soon is going to be the last time that I push him in the swing. Before I know it, it'll be the last time that I push him in a swing. He's learning how to ride his bike, and his legs are just a little bit too short to get on there. So I do have to hold it to get him on because he can't kick the kickstand right now without falling off. And that's going to be gone before I know it. He's going to have it, and then he has that little bit of independence that we get as a young boy of being able to ride his bike wherever he wants. And my daughter, she's 3, and she tells the most wild, outrageous story. So we ask her every morning, like, hey, Tilly, tell us a story. And she always starts with, once about a time. Once about a time.
Yeah.
And one day she's going to realize that it's once upon a time. And she won't say once about a time anymore. And I could so easily be missing out on those things.
Yep. It's such an interesting thing. Yeah, that just got me a little bit emotional thinking about that as well. Because it's also one of the biggest paradoxes, I think, in the world, is that your job as a parent and as a father is to make yourself obsolete for your kids to live their best life. Like I want my daughter, like I want her to reach out to me obviously like when she, when she wants to talk or whatever, but I don't want her to need me to be able to do things in her life. Like that's about me then. Then I want my son to be independent and do the things like obviously like if he's in a jam, I got your back always, right? But like you want your kids to be able to be independent and do those things on their own. And the bike analogy is such a great thing as well. Because I think as you're raising your kids, as situations come up and insert any situation here, it's like teaching them how to ride a bike, right? Like first they see you riding a bike and they're like, I want to ride a bike too. I want to be able to do that. So you sit them up on there and maybe their feet don't touch the pedals just yet. And you basically hold the back seat and kind of let them cruise around. And then they finally put their foot on the pedal and you do the same thing. So now they're pedaling and you're holding on to the back. And then maybe you kind of run alongside them a little bit as you're holding on and they kind of know that you're still there. And then finally, like they're off on their own and they might fall down, which is going to happen in their life. Like they will fall down. Know that you're there. I'm gonna be there to pick you up. And before you know it, they're out, riding over the train tracks, and they're like Stranger Things. They're going fighting demigorgons or something in the future because we were able to set them up for that success. And I just that's what with my own kids, that's what I've tried to do. There's been a lot of trials and tribulations, but I think like wrapping it back around to lessons that I'm teaching the young men right now, I don't sugarcoat it either. I'm like, you know what? Life is going to be really hard for you. I'm especially if I go into more of an inner city type school. I don't know what it's like to be a young black man 16 years old in Newark, New Jersey. I have no idea what that's like. I've gone through struggles. I know that you have gone through struggles, and I know you will go through struggles in your life. The more that you practice the art of like learning how to be resilient, the more that you intentionally put yourself in uncomfortable situations, the more you're going to develop the skill to be able to handle difficult situations as they come up, because they will. You'll lose people in your life. You'll get let down. You'll get your heart broken. You'll lose the job. You'll not be successful. We're going to practice how do you get over situations like that by doing things intentionally that are difficult and also delaying gratification. Can you, wait to eat the ice cream until after the broccoli's finished on your plate? Can you get the homework done and then go outside and hang out with your friends? Can you do the chores, take out the garbage, do the dishes before you get on your phone? So can you do the hard thing first and then put off the thing that you want to do till later? And that's like everything in life. That helps develop self-discipline and resiliency. Like for you, like I'm gonna get my workout done before I do X, Y, and Z. And all those things together is like, again, it's like riding a bicycle for the kid. So thanks for putting that up on the tape for me. I really appreciate that.
It's a good analogy. It's also a perfect representation of our role as fathers is to steward them and to be there to show them and then to guide them and encourage. And if they got it, you rocked it, dude. You're so strong. I'm so impressed with you. Or if they fall down, it's like, hey man, I got you. Good work. You can still do it. And I'm here. And you were telling me right before we got on about your Father's Day reflection that's coming up
Mm.
on Father's Day. What are some of the things that are coming through for you now as we approach that?
There's a couple things. I mean, one, I look back at when I was little, I looked up to my father. Like he could do no wrong. He was a big, strong, good-looking guy. He did all the things like I mentioned in the beginning, the ideals of false masculinity, and that's what I thought I wanted to be. So I had a couple moments. I have some pretty tear-jerking stories that I'll share with the boys that like really reshaped who I thought I was and who now I knew he was. And I dealt with identity things in my life where I thought I'm weak, I'm scared, I'm a pussy, I can't handle situations that are going to come up in my life based on my interactions with my father. And for a long time, I definitely put myself in the victim mindset. You know, I should never have gone through those experiences as a young man, but I let it really creep into my adulthood for a long period of time. And one of the reflections that I have is if I were to go back, I wouldn't change anything. I really, I it's like I needed to go through that struggle to become who I am today. I mean, sure, would it be great to have the dad that, He's like, "Hey, come sit on my lap, son. I'm gonna read you a book and give you a kiss, tell you I love you, and then I'm proud of you." Sure, that would be great. I never heard those words from my father one time in my entire life. So what it helped me do is realize, like, one, for my own kids, like, they need that. And then two, how many thousands and thousands of kids, even millions of kids out there are going through the same thing that I'm going through. So I was lucky enough to be able to find some mentors and some role models in my life. Some of them were like, Chevy Chase as a dad in Christmas Vacation, or Don Mattingly was a first baseman for the New York Yankees as I was growing up. That like showed me some little things to do from afar without me or them even realizing it. And some were coaches that I had or teachers that I had and or my friends' dads. I just picked up these little tiny things along the way. And I'm like, that's really important. I wish my dad had that as well. So it's almost like the movie Slumdog Millionaire where they're trying to figure out how did you know the answer to all these questions and win the $1,000,000 at the end. And it wasn't because he was so much smarter. It's just like he had a life experience that taught him that specific lesson. And I think what it was able to do for me as I reflect back is I took all those heartaches and hardships and character, deficiencies that my father had. And I was able to say, for me, as I become a dad, I want to have this as well. I want to have the thing that he didn't show me. And what I tell the boys, they've been through some pretty horrific things in their own life, some traumatic situations. And we know like how trauma can really, really impact brain development for, kids that are growing up. I say things that have happened to you, they're not your fault. Like if you got abused or beat or you got neglected or whatever the thing is, you got a cigarette put out on your arm when you were a kid, that's not your fault. But as you're growing and as you mature into a man, it's 100% now your responsibility to deal with that situation. Because if you don't deal with it, that's going to figure out a way to either, come out in alcoholism or drug abuse or, dysfunctional relationships or outbursts aggressively. So start now and try to figure out how am I going to process through that thing that I went through that I shouldn't have had to go through when I was 12 years old or 7 years old or whatever it was. But now use it as an opportunity to become more of a strength for yourself. So I tell my stories and I say, did it suck that I went through that? Of course. But now I'm happy that I did because I can share the things that I've went through with you and help you guys become even better, more resilient men in the future because of that situation.
Yeah, I think about my wife and I were talking about it a couple of weeks ago. She's like, if you could go back, would you change anything?
Mm,
And no,
mm,
no, because I wouldn't be who I am. I may not have met her.
right.
I may not have these three beautiful babies. There are things that I'm tempted to say, yeah, if I could get my old self, my younger self, and like shake him and be like, wake
Mm,
up.
yep.
I might not tell him some things because I needed those things. I needed that time in the wild. I needed those Goliaths in order to make me who I am today. I was sharing with some guys, I led a retreat this weekend about some of my struggles recently. And to bring a little bit of scripture in is God or the angel, whomever it was, whichever one of them it was, had to break Jacob's leg before he could become
Mm,
Israel, which eventually became the entire tribe. And he who wrestles with God. In order for that gift to come, there had to be the wound. And from that was all the abundance and all the life that grew out of that. And I wouldn't change that. And to your
mm,
analogy with the shaken up
yeah.
soda, if we don't deal with it, but we try to we can erupt that out at the people that we love. But if we don't deal with it, then there's a flatness that settles in
Mm,
as well. And I think that a lot of men have that flatness in their hearts and in their souls. And we're covering it over with everything underneath the sun. Coping mechanisms to going golfing on the weekends and missing out with our family,
mm,
whatever it might be. There's one other thing I wanna ask you about. And that is one thing that we often don't talk about at all as men, but more men than we realize struggle with it. And that's pornography.
mm.
And so I'm curious, what are our boys encountering? How do you approach that with them? Because there's a temptation, and there's even like a whole half of the political spectrum that's like, oh, it's not a big deal. wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I want to ask you.
It's it's one of my favorite lessons during the year with the young men that I talk to, and one of the things that we talk about is integrity, doing the right thing when no one's watching. And I'll share with them my story. One of the cool things as well is that I'm hired by the school district, but I'm not a school district employee. So I can talk to the boys about the real shit. And I basically tell them, ask me any question and I will give you my honest answer in the best way that I possibly can. And so I talked to them about pornography in the way that the first year that Playboy came out was in the 1950s and there was something like 54,000 subscribers. And now every day, just Pornhub gets like 81 million views a minute on just Pornhub. 81 million views every single minute. And what I talk to him about is, hundreds of years ago, take the richest man in the entire world. Today, a 13-year-old could see more naked women in one day than that king or whoever could see in his entire lifetime. And so when I first bring up the idea of pornography, they all kind of look around and they joke and they just smiling and they get red or whatever. I'm like, here's the thing. This is something that you're experiencing right now, either you have or you're about to experience, because it's something along the lines of like 85 to 90% of young men before the age of 14 have seen pornography, and like the percentage of them that have seen like violent pornography as well is a very high percentage. It's more than 50%. So if you haven't seen it, I know that this is in your future. So let's talk about it. And a lot of parents are not talking to their kids about it because it's an awkward conversation to have. But it's such a disservice to your kid if you're afraid as the father to have an awkward conversation. They're getting their lesson about it from their phone or from the internet or from Pornhub or whatever it is. So I talk to them about developmentally where their brains are. It basically creates this like dopamine overload in their brain. I remember growing up, and I say it almost exactly like this. I remember growing up and the first time that I saw a Playboy, your heart is beating a mile a minute and you're kind of like looking around like, "Oh my god, there's a Playboy in my hand right now." And you see boobs for the first time and you're like, this is the greatest thing in the whole entire world." And then you close it up and, whatever, and then the next time you see it, you're like, "Okay, there's boobs again, but maybe it needs to be a little bit more." So I reach for the penthouse the next time, or I try to steal the penthouse. And then but there's a big break in the time that happens in between as we were growing up. Now, how they're scrolling through, it's constant. And not only that, it's not just they're going to look at a woman with no clothes on that could turn them on. Now it's they need to see, you know, penetration, and then they need to see group sex, or and it has to get more and more and more to give them the same dopamine hit as they were getting before. So they're basically training themselves to be almost addicted to heroin. It's like the same thing that it's doing to their brain. So I talk to them about it and I say, not only that, guys, like young men that are like habitually using pornography, by the time you get into your early 20s, you might need the assistance of like an erectile dysfunction medication as a young man in their 20s. Like, and they're looking around like, are you serious? Absolutely. So that's why I tell them, like, this is the stuff you're not learning about that in 11th grade in any classroom, but we talk about that in Building Men. And this is one of the coolest things to me. It was an eighth grade boy. This was probably 3 years ago. At the end of the year, he came up to me because I'll do that lesson in like January timeframe. We need to have some level of trust and community built before I can, bring that topic up to the boys. I don't hit them over the head with it in the beginning, but we talk about it and I show them the stats around it and what it can do to their brains. And a young man came up to me. He's 14 years old. He came to me at the end of the school year and he said, and I quote, "I want to thank you for the lesson you did about porn." He said, "I was beating my meat 4 times a day." And I was very graphic way to explain it to me, but he said, "I stopped watching pornography." And he said, "Not only did I make the honor roll for the first time," he said, "I got back into playing soccer and I made the travel soccer team because I recognized I was spending so much time connected to that." And especially for young men, it's like they discover video games for the first time. It's opening up this whole new world. And I'm a father of 2 daughters. I don't want them dating a guy who's getting his ideas around how to treat women in a romantic relationship from their phone in an abusive way. So I'm very invested in this, and it's something that I do talk about with the boys. And I think they feel the freedom to then talk about it as well, because it's not this taboo thing that no one talks about. And a lot of these boys don't have a father figure in their home who's sharing any level of knowledge and wisdom. And the cool thing is, when I go into a school, Rob, the only thing that I require is that one, that, I have a space that's, dedicated and secure. So they're not out there on stage in front of a larger group. And I just ask for the school to provide one male mentor slash role model that can participate in the meetings as well. And some of the schools I work with, there's like 3 or 4 guys that are coming to every single meeting because they're also getting something out of it. It's like the men's group for them as well. And so I've had some of the mentors talk about being addicted to porn and how it ruined relationships in their life. So when you have boys watching men going through some struggles as well, one of the guys in the groups, this is in the first year that I ran it as a business, talked to the boys about having a gambling addiction. And he talked about he lost like $25,000 and he almost got divorced because of it. And the boys like, oh my God, I had no idea you were going through this. So what we do as well is we model for the boys, how do men handle challenges and struggles? I think too often, Rob, like guys see the men in their lives tell the stories of the time that they hit the game winning shot, or when they carried the cheerleader on their shoulder off the field after they scored the winning touchdown. In life, it's not like that. You get those victories that are great sometimes, but most of the time it's like, man, I missed 2 layups and the team lost by 3 points. Or I was afraid to take the jump shot because what if I missed it? Or I didn't ask the girl out, or I came in late and I got fired from work. Boys need to see that men struggle as well. And if they don't, we're held up to this high standard. And when they struggle, they're like, damn, I'm the only one who's going through this right now. I'm the only one. So one of the reasons we normalize the struggles is not only for them to see that they're going through it, but there are men in their life that are now successful, that have gone through some pretty difficult things as well. But it goes back to that idea of resilience, right? Like we were able to understand what it took to overcome that. It wasn't an overnight thing, right? I tell them, one of the quotes that I use is, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today. So if you haven't gone through this before, like start today. Start like learning these lessons now, and that'll springboard you into the future.
And I gotta say it again. I gotta say it again. You can't help your boys with that if you're immersed in it yourself. And so it is, even the things that you think that they don't see, and even the things that they don't see, they pick up
Mm.
in the field through your nervous system is always communicating. Always communicating. Okay. So you were sharing with me before we got on about how some of this stuff has come like totally full circle now. And some of these young men who you mentored back in the beginning
Mm.
are now stepping into a position of mentorship. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, it's one of the coolest things, and it was a benefit that I didn't anticipate when I first started it. I was basically like, how do I get this going in a school system? And I do too. Like I do my own individual coaching with young men in middle school and in high school, and a little bit into their early 20s. But how do I make it work in a school, and really from an outsider's perspective to come in? So what I started to see is, after the boys have gone through the program for a year, like they started to really embody those things. And I watched them have conversations not only with each other, but every once in a while they would like give a piece of advice to a kid who was younger. And I was like, you know what? This is even more powerful. Like it's one thing to hear a piece of advice, or to get taught a lesson from a guy who's in his late 40s. But for me as a freshman in high school, to hear a kid who's going to be a senior tell me, hey man, when I was your age, I made this mistake. If you get onto this path now, you'll avoid a lot of hardships. All of a sudden now, like you have kids that are seniors in high school that are participating in a mentorship role, working with the younger groups of like eighth and ninth graders. And then I have the middle school age kids working with kids that are in elementary school, being like mini mentors, big brothers. And it's then all of a sudden you could see a community shift. It's not an overnight thing. Sometimes it's like doing a K turn with a barge. You gotta, like, it takes some time to get to that point. But when it happens, then I'm like, all right, you don't need me to be here anymore. Like you guys got this. You guys are on the right path. Just kind of keep that cycle rolling in the future. And so this summer I'm doing a building men leadership program in North Jersey. And I actually hired boys that are graduating from high school that have gone through the program. These are boys as freshmen. They were not passing any classes. They were getting suspended from school from being in fights. They were the ones who were telling the teachers to go F themselves. Now they're boys that I'm like, I trust you to work with a group of younger kids to help teach them accountability and authenticity and resilience and self-discipline. And to me, that's one of the coolest things that's ever happened that I did not anticipate.
Mm-hmm. And that is what that's the structure that we're meant to have as men.
Mm.
In our tribes and our communities, which have been whittled down to this little nuclear family, which puts so much more responsibility on us as a father, but you're restoring that. And I imagine that shift is going to extend far beyond those schools that they're in into the broader community as a whole.
Mm.
Man, more of this.
Yep.
More of this, man.
Yep. Because here's the thing, if we can, I believe in the work that you're doing and you're working with dads but a lot of them, like if they had a program like this, right? Just imagine the possibility if they were learning these lessons when they were 14, 15, 16 years old in groups in a setting where they're like, wow, we can do this and we could do this together. And uh, I just think a lot of pitfalls can be avoided with some of the things that young men are facing as they're growing up if they had something like this. And, if it's this program in your school or in your community, that'd be great. If not, then create something on your own. Get together and try to create something. It took me 20 years to get to the point where I have it pretty locked in now to where I can come in and I've worked in every single kind of school, rural, socioeconomically, high levels, low levels, inner city. It works. This stuff just works. It might sound a little bit different and the approach with the activities might be a little bit different, but the message and the branding, it's all right on point. So, I I encourage people to start working with the next generation. It's like, if you could pour into a kid that's just going through a difficult time, like you could change that kid's life and the ripple effect of all the relationships that young man has moving forward, it'll just make the world a better place.
Anything that we missed or that I should have asked that I haven't?
I think you nailed it, my man. I also appreciate just the vibe and being present in the moment. I've been on podcasts where it's just like a checklist of like I get done answering and it's like, all right, next question 4B. You soak it in, and I could definitely feel like you let the whole thing, really marinate and seep in. And I just appreciate that in the conversation as well. We've only talked twice now, and I feel like, hey man, like I know you and I trust you, and like I'm proud of you as a dad and everything that you're doing, and the fact that you're taking what you're doing and you're spreading it out and pouring into other people as well. We need more men like you. So thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I appreciate that. And that's the intentional, I think the intentional right brain cultivation for me. And it's been so
Mm.
much work. It's been so much work, but that's where the magic is. So as we wrap this thing up, where can we get more of you? How do we get involved with what you're doing?
Thank you for that opportunity, man. So I run a podcast. It's called the Building Men Podcast. 200 and something episodes out. I I had my brother as my co-host for about 80 or 90 of them, and after he passed, I needed to take a little bit of time off of the podcast, and I'd love to have you on as well. Let's put that out there into the universe. So that's, you could definitely find some more of what I'm doing there. My website is buildingmen.io, and my Instagram is building. Might try to put something out, every couple days or so. I don't spend a ton of time on it, but I like to put something out there just to give people some type of resource. For my thing, like Building Men, what I can do is come into a school/community. I could do either a full year of a program, 1 day a month, or do more of a train the trainer and then hand off the work and the curriculum. And then I also work with young men individually, and I usually work with them for a full year. And I do, a coaching session every other week. And it's the same type of thing that we talked about here. And there are times where it might be the same message that you're giving your son, but just to hear it from a little bit of a different perspective. As I'm coaching my son as he's growing up, I was a pitcher in college. And as he was pitching, I'm telling him, like, hey, this is how you throw a changeup and move your. from me, from his dad, sometimes it sounds different than if Coach Keith tells him the same exact thing. So sometimes, your son hearing from another mentor, role model, someone that's gone through it, the change in tone and voice might be all they need to kind of get up to that point. So that's what I work with young men as well, and more of a one-on-one capacity.
Amazing. Thank you. We'll put all of that in the show notes. And pretty much brings us to completion, man. For everybody that's here, you're getting this at the very beginning of July and officially announcing that we're going to be rocking the Patriarch Summit in September. On September 11th is when it starts, 2026, because masculinity, especially fatherhood, has been on life support. So many of us are experiencing that flatness that Dennis has talked about. And there's nothing more important to reviving our family, our communities, and really in the world. And it's Men's Mental Health Month. And men are struggling, and we don't talk about it. There's nothing more important than that, or to that, than reviving ourselves, bringing back men and husbands and fathers as leaders. And so the Patriarch Summit, we've got 9 amazing speakers. Ryan Mickler is going to be there. Nate Feathers is going to be there. Mike Salemi is going to be there. We've got Daniel
Dude,
Gross.
I love Mike Salemi. He's one of my buddies, man. He's on the Building Men podcast.
Yeah.
Just give him a big hug for me when you see that, man.
Mike connected us initially, and so it's going to be an amazing time. And so if you are looking to revive yourself as a husband, as a father, as a moral leader, and restore yourself as a man in your relationship, in your marriage, in your money, in your spiritual leadership, any of those things, come to the Patriarch Summit. It's going to be an awesome time. We have a ton of awesome giveaways as well for VIP registrants. You guys get to keep it all for life. And that's it. Thank you all for being here so much. If you got something out of this, go to Dennis's page, get involved with Dennis and Building Men. If you got something out of this, send us $5 on Venmo. I'll make you a producer. You can put that on IMDb. It's pretty cool. It's pretty impressive. And outside of that, thanks for being here and have an uncommon day.